Okay, today we're doing Mod 5, Lesson 10. Lesson objective is find the area of rectangles with whole by mixed and whole by fractional side lengths by tiling, record by drawing, relate to fraction multiplication. And our essential question is how can I find the area of a rectangle with fractional side lengths by tiling? Now we're going to discuss that in a minute with those different words. Now, this is a standard we're working with, which is MAFS 5 NF24, and it has a rather long wording of it, but we're worried more about B, the section B, 24B, and that says find the area of rectangle with fractional side lengths by tiling it. Okay, so that's in fifth grade, real simple terminology. We're going to use mixed numbers and whole numbers to multiply against each other to find the area, and we're going to be using what's called tiling. Now, some definition area. We know area is the amount of space inside of a boundary. And we've worked with area before. And let me get my pen here. Because one thing we know about area, because we've been working with volume, is that we know area equals length times width. Okay? So the area is the amount of space inside the boundary of a flat two-dimensional object, such as a rectangle. And we have an example of one down here. Okay, that's a flat two-dimensional shape. Now, tiling is a collection of subsets of a plane. In other words, like these different squares that are in this rectangle down below, those are subsets of a plane. And they are also tiles. And what we've done is we've tiled that with no gaps in between, no overlaps. And we can see this is a 3 by a 4. We multiply these together and we know we get 12. So that's be 12 units squared. Now it doesn't know, our unit happens to be this size of this square right here. We're not saying centimeters, inches, feet. All we're doing is just saying units, 12 units, 12 square units to make that rectangle. Now this tiling is what we're going to be using today with fractional side lengths. So let's get started. First thing, now just like the other one, if you notice on this one here, I have four rows, and I have 2 columns up top. If I were to count them, I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It took 8 tiles to cover that area. And we can see that 4 times 2 equals 8 units squared. Squared because of 2 dimensions, the length times the width that we've multiplied to get it. Now those were whole numbers. Let's see what happens when we do fractional side units. Okay, now this time you can see we have 3 times 2.5. So I have 3 rows, and here I have 2 wholes, and I have a half. So 3 times 2.5. Now if I were to count the tiles, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes, and 1, 2, 3 halves, which we know that would equal 6 plus 1.5, which equals 7.5. And that was just by counting the tiles, because we counted them with 1/2, 1/2, and 1/2, which we know was 3 halves. Now let's use the distributive property and see how this works, okay? So if I were to take 3 times 2.5, I'd actually have to break that up to 3 times 2 plus 3 times 1/2. Now 3 times 2 would be equal 6, plus 3 times 1/2 would be 3 halves, which equals, once again, 7 1/2. Okay. For our next one, we can see again that we have 4 rows, and this time we have 1.5 columns. So when we counted up our holes, we know we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have 1/2, another 1/2, 1/2, and 1/2. So I actually end up with 4 and 4/2, which we know that's equals 4, and 2 will go into 4 2 times. So it equals a total of 6 units cubed. No, actually, I'm sorry, squared. Now, let's use the distributive property again. So we can see we have 4 times 1/2, which when we distribute it, we go 4 times 1, and then we're going to add that to 4 times 1/2, which that's going to give us 4 plus 4/2 again, which gives us 6 units squared. Our next example, this time we have a whole number times a fraction. Let's see how that works. So here I actually have 4, and I have 3/4 here. So 4 times 3/4. And I can see if I were to count by 3/4, that'd be 3, 6, 9, that's 12 quarters. Because if I just counted it by quarters, 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, 8/4, 9/4, 10/4, 11/4, and 12/4. Now we know 12/4, 4 we're going to 12 3 times, so we have 12 units squared. Now the same here, 4 times 3/4 we know is equal to 4 times 3 over 4. I can take out my 4's, and I know that equals 3. Because 4 goes into 4 one time, this 4 goes in that one time, which is 3 over 1, which equals 3, if you still didn't see that. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing in class today. We're going to be sitting there and multiplying using tiling. We won't be overlapping, okay, or putting any gaps. We'll be finding out the area of a rectangle by tiling.